Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Dhamma, Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata cha Pita Twameva Twameva Bandhuscha Sakha Twameva Twameva Vedya Dravidam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Well, good morning and welcome to our Upanishad class. This is the first time we've met since before COVID, when we were actually in the middle of Taittiriya Upanishad. So before we start, for those of us here in person, let's go around and share our names because we've got some people who may not know one another. Anthony. Howard.
David. Santosh.
Kirsten. Soundarya.
And I'm Jim. And do we have any brand new people online that may want to introduce themselves? Okay. So, Upanishads. Upanishads are part of the Vedas. What is a Veda? Veda comes from the root vid. By the way, can the people online hear me? Mark, can you give us a
Yeah.
reality check?
Yeah, we could hear.
Okay. Veda. Veda comes from the root vid, which means to know. And this is the primary source literature for perhaps the major branch of Hinduism. There are others. There are tantric paths. There are other ones. So it's not always Vedic. There are other forms, but it's the best known and probably the most widely practiced. Vedas are really old. The Rig Veda is the oldest book in the world. Western scholars will date it to Bronze Age, maybe 3000 BCE. Hindu scholars push it back earlier to about 8000 BCE, meaning right after the end of the Ice Age. This is before writing. We did not have scripts. So the earliest transmission of the Vedic literature was done orally. So it's referred to as Shruti. Who can tell me what Shruti means in Sanskrit? Are you here? Yeah. Two ways to look at it. One is the rishis. These are the wise people who, through their own deep meditative experience, came up with the Vedas. They heard them from the infinite. But another way of looking at it is the way in which it was transmitted. So in each of the villages, there would be a person who was essentially the local living library. They would memorize a Veda. And that was their family's job. These were kind of the origins of these, the caste of the Brahmins, the priest caste. Their job was not only to do ritual, but their job was also to be the holders. Their very bodies were the holders of this Shruti, this wisdom. We even have names that come down. I remember a person whose name was Triwadi, their last name. What does that mean? Well, their family was super smart. They had to memorize 3 Vedas. I mean, if you know Vishwa, Vishwa's last name is Dave, Do Veda. So her particular family, 2 of them, they had to learn 2 Vedas. So the Vedas are 4 in number. Oldest one is the Rig Veda. This Upanishad we're studying comes from the Shukla Yajur Veda. The Yajur Veda has 2 recensions, 2 different editions. There's the Krishna Yajur Veda and the Shukla Yajur Veda, the black one and the white one. The black one is all jumbled up in no particular order. The Shukla has almost all of the same material, but it's a little bit more organized. Then there's the Samaveda and the Atharva Veda. Now, how is a Veda organized? 2 different ways we can look at it. Usually we talk about the 4 different sections of the Veda. The first section of the Veda, the Samhita, or mantra portion, which are hymns, mantras that are to be done as devotion, but also to be used in Vedic rituals. Then there's the Brahmana section. These are rubrics. These are instructions to priests on how to do various rituals. You need to build the fire in a certain way, and you have to have so many priests, and they need to sit here and there, and you have to have ghee, and you have to have milk, and you have to have these particular seeds and grains, and it's done at this time of day for this particular purpose. This is the Brahmana section, the rubrics, the instructions. You all know what a rubric is? Yes, no? Yes. Yes. You know why they call it a rubric? Because in a Catholic missal, the instructions were printed in red, like ruby. That's where the word comes from. The next section is called the Aranyakas. This is forest literature. This is kind of halfway between the ritual portion and moving into the Upanishad portion. Some of it has ritual in it, some of it has philosophy. And the concluding portion of the Vedas is called Upanishad. Now, it doesn't mean chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. No, the Upanishads are all placed, they're throughout the whole text of the Vedas. How many Upanishads are there? Some people say there's over 1,000 of them. Scholars tend to identify 108 as principal major Upanishads. Of those 108, 11 of them were commented on by Adi Shankara, the great 8th century saint. He wrote what's called a Bhashya, commentary on those. And since that time, those 11 have been called the principal Upanishads. Doesn't mean they're the best or the most important. They're just the ones Shankara commented on. For example, who here did our retreat? I guess it's what, 4 years ago now? that we did at the Anand retreat, and we studied Kaivalya Upanishad, Shankara did not comment on that. I think it's a really important Upanishad. Swamiji certainly did. But there's no Shankarabhashya on that. They're really old. This particular Upanishad, Isha, probably dates Bronze Age, maybe into the Iron Age. So we're talking somewhere around maybe 1500 BCE to no later than 800 BCE. Pre-Buddhist. Really, really old. Written probably around the same time as Chandogya and Brihad Aranyaka, which are other very, very important Upanishads. Now, that's one way of talking about how we describe Vedas, how they're organized and stuff. Another way, and this is especially important for our study of this Upanishad, we have what's called the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, two sections. Karma Kanda means the ritual portion. It's an earlier understanding of the word karma. When we get more into the later yogic literature, karma usually just means action. Vedic period, it most usually meant ritual action. So, mantras, brahmanas, most of the Aranyaka literature is karma kanda, how to do ritual. What was ritual used for? In this particular part of the Hindu philosophy and many other ancient religions, we had many different gods, devas. Deva comes from the root div, which means to shine. In the Vedic literature, the word deva is mystic symbolism. And the various devas have usually one of three meanings. First, and most usual in Vedic literature, the presiding principle over a force of nature. So you have Vayu, the god of the wind, Varuna, the god of the sea, etc. And the same kind of thing in Greek and Roman mythology. So you have Zeus, who's a thunder god. Same as Jupiter, who's a thunder god. Same as Indra, who's a thunder god. Same dude, just different names. A deva can also mean a presiding principle over an area of human activity. Sometimes deva will also mean the senses. Now, in the Semitic religions, the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the basic way of approaching divinity is God is out there, God is the infinite, and what my job is to surrender to that God, to endeavor to discern God's will, to try to tell God what to do. You probably get smoked with a thunderbolt. Who are you to tell me what to do? in this earlier layer of worship, the idea was the gods could be controlled through ritual. So that occurs even today in Hindu religious practice, one of the most common. Any of you have a relative or a friend who's opened a business and had a statue, a murti of the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, installed? Then what do?
Appreciate her.
And before you even open the business, what happens?
There's a ritual.
Who does it?
Priest.
The priest. And what does he do? What's this ritual designed to do?
We invoke the grace.
In other words, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, can be controlled through ritual. You see? Does it work or not? We're not going to get into that, but it is the practice. I had a student who was talking about having gone to an astrologer, and she wanted to get married. And the astrologer says, "Oh, do this mantra, and you'll find a husband." So the idea is we can control natural forces through ritual, various practices and various mantras. Now, this occurred in Greece, it occurred in Rome, it occurs in many, many ancient cultures. This was not exclusive to the early Indo-Europeans. So this is called the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. It's the vast majority of it. And there is also a little more mature form, which is devotion. The example I like to give, any of you have had teenage kids or remember when you were a teenager and their first year of college, a kid comes home from college on the holidays or a visit. What do they have in the car? A great big bag of laundry. They come in and they say, "Mom, will you help me with the laundry?" Meaning, will you do my laundry for me? And then she goes to Daddy and says, "I've run out of money. Will you write me a check?" Who's had kids do that? It's really common. At that age, that's the way we look at our parents. Then if you get married and you have your first kid, oh, I don't know what to do with this. Anybody remember that or have a relative like your sister? It's scary to have that baby. But as we mature, oh, you're going to go visit your folks? Why? Oh, I just want to be near my mother. I love my mother. You don't want anything from her. You just want to be in her presence. Who's gone home to do that? So as we mature as human beings, our relationship with our parents changes. So also, as you and I evolve spiritually, our relationship with the divine, with the gods, the beginning, give me what I want. Help, I'm in crisis. And finally, I just want to be in the presence of the infinite. So we have devotional hymns. Any questions about this as a process? All of the karma kanda section of the Vedas deals with that. You okay?
Yes.
The Jnana Kanda, the second section, is the Upanishads. The Upanishads deal with one subject alone. They are almost always written in the form of a dialogue between a teacher and a student or students. They're kind of Socratic in their form that way. By the way, all of the rishis who are there in the Upanishads teaching us are all householders. So later on, we get these ideas that in order to be spiritual, you have to withdraw from the world and be a celibate and run around in orange clothes, have a 5-syllable unpronounceable name. And the earliest and most authoritative dispensation of mystic experience, all of the rishis were householders. Frequently, they're talking to their children. So, what is the content of the Upanishads? And here we have to go into the basic philosophy and the practice that's implied in the Upanishadic literature. In each of the 4 Vedas, from one of the Upanishads of each one of them, we get what we call a Mahavakya. Vakya comes from the root vachati, which means to speak, an utterance. Maha means great. So a great or profound utterance, which sets forth the essence of the deep philosophy, this Advaita, non-dual philosophy that we find in the Upanishads. By the way, back up a bit. This particular philosophy and practice is frequently called Advaita Vedanta. Vedanta means Veda, Anta. Anta means the end. So it means the study of the philosophy in the Upanishads. It means deeper things too. But we'll get to that. So these 4 Mahavakyas, I like to set them forward in terms of a story because it helps us remember them. So there's a gal and she wants to have a deep mystical experience. So she goes off to India. Why India? Well, Karl Marx said religion is the opiate of the populace. Indians have the inside dope. They have crafted the technology of mystical experience over thousands of years. Doesn't mean mystical experience doesn't happen in other parts of the world, but it's the great cultural gift of Mother India. to have crafted the technology. So this gal goes finally to a village in the Himalayas. I'm looking for a master. Tell me what the truth is. The elders in the village says, oh, there's an old Mataji up in the hills. She's a great saint. Go talk to her. So this gal goes up the paths and goes into this cave. This old woman, batted locks, missing teeth, wrinkles. This girl, she pranams and she says, Mother, what is the truth? What is God? The old lady says, Prajnanam Brahma. What does Brahman mean? Oh. It comes from the root, which means really, really big, expansive. Why? Brahman is a neuter noun. We don't have to worry about being politically correct. And it means, it's the word that we use in Sanskrit to indicate ultimate reality, truth of everything. The first Mahavakya is Brahman is consciousness. Now, Buddhists will use the same word, prajna, to mean intuition, but it also means awareness, consciousness itself. So the first thunderous declaration of all the Upanishads is that the nature of ultimate reality is consciousness itself. God is not a form. There's no sky daddy. That's our anthropomorphic superimposition. Ultimate reality is not zero either. It's consciousness. So then the gal says to the Mataji, well, where do I find it? I've come all the way up to the Himalayas to find this. And the old lady says, I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. Oh, the self. Where am I going to find the Atman, the self? Would you have to have an experience of seeing the Atman? Is that it? How do I find this Atman, which is Brahman? Top 12. Let's see. You are that. And this third one is called the Upadesha Mahavakya. Upadesha means to teach or to instruct. So all of the branches of yoga, which is our endeavor to come to the direct experience of this philosophical truth, not just the intellectual understanding, is contained in that third. Brahman, ultimate reality, and the self of every individual, they are the same. That's the thunderous message of the Upanishads. So then this gal goes to the next door cave. She stays there for several years, serving the Guru, spending time in deep meditation. At an auspicious moment, all of the attachments have been let go. All of these fake, phony ideas of self have been. Her mind thunders to a stop. And that personal sense of self when the mind returns, it's completely reconditioned by this. Then the young Shisha, the young woman, goes, Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Mind, notice she doesn't say, I know Brahman. But I am. So in these four statements, we have condensed into their densest form the entire teaching of the Upanishads. So this is the subject matter of Ishavasya. Now, what does the word Upanishad mean? Upanishad. Shad means to sit down. Upanishad means to sit down near. Because this is how traditionally this transmission, not just the information, we call that paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge, but how the direct experience, what is it that I experience? Aham Brahmasmi, I am that. Aparoksha jnana. How that's transmitted. This particular event here is a gestalt. It's not just the teacher, but it's the intention of the students. It's the scripture that we study. If what we do is auspicious, then we come into the direct experience. So Isha comes from Yajurveda, and it's part of the Jnana Kanda, the knowledge portion. All right, so that's about all I have as far as introductory material. For some of you, this is stuff you've heard before, but I think for some people, it's new. Are there any questions so far? Okay, now, whenever we begin study of Upanishad, by the way, the verses are not called shlokas. The verses are mantras because they're part of the Vedas. We start with a mangalam, a blessing, a shanti mantra, a mantra that's a peace invocation. And the peace invocation, the shanti mantra, that's associated with this particular Upanishad is the Purnamada. Which we've traditionally around here do at the end of most of our study. But we'll also do it at the beginning because it's the Shanti mantra associated with this Upanishad. So if you know it, let's chant it together. Again, it always starts with Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That's for the end part. Okay, so this is our invocation, our Shanti. So I have it on the sheet for the handout, and we will chant it every week for those of you online. If it's new to you, you'll pick it up. But let's go into what it means. So this is our first dive into the Upanishad itself. Purnam. Purnam means full. Can also mean fecund. Fecund means pregnant. Has that meaning as well. In your Sanskrit, did you get any other meanings for Purnam?
No, full, mostly full.
Yeah. Purnam Adaha. Adaha means that. That's a technical term. That refers to the infinite, the ultimate. Now, later on, 1,000 years later or more, we will come along with Buddhist philosophy. One school of Buddhist philosophy is called the Shunyavadins, the scholiasts of the void. Shunya means void or empty. The Shunyavadins say there is no ultimate reality. It's all void. It's all shunyata. It's empty. It's void. There's nothing there. I had a conversation many years ago, a fellow named Roger, who was a retired professor of comparative religion from Duke University. He was a Pure Land Buddhist, and his particular understanding was Shunyavada, scholiast of the void. There's no reality. What the Christian experiences is different than what the Hindu experiences, which is different than what the Buddhist experiences, which is different than what the Sufi experiences. They all just have an experience which is unreal and void. The only thing that's common is some common points of practice. Vedanta doesn't say that. Vedanta says there is a grounded being. And it's real. So, and it's purna. It's full. Now, there are schools of Buddhism which thunder the same thing. Not all schools of Buddhism are Shunyavadins. The self is no thing. Ultimate reality is no thing, but it's not nothing. It's purna, it's full. It's full of bhava, it's full of being. like to say God is not an it, God's a who. No place where consciousness is absent. Purnamada, Purnam Idam. Idam means this. This again is a technical term which refers to the phenomenal world. It's usually paired with sarvamidam, all this, meaning the entire phenomenal world of name and form, gross and subtle. Everything that is seeable, knowable, cognizable, world of name and form. And here the mantra says that too is Purna. What does that mean? It means that this God being, this God presence, which we call Brahman, pervades the entire phenomenal world. Is that pantheism, Jim? Is that what Vedanta is saying? The whole world is sacred? No, and yes. Vedanta is not pantheistic, it is panentheistic. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, in one tiny corner, by infinite being, so small you could barely see it, it's so teeny tiny, is the entire cosmos. So Vedanta says, yes, the entire world is pervaded by God, but God is way beyond. So anybody here studied mathematics? You're in IT, you must have studied some math. So we have different sizes of infinity. How many real numbers are there? Infinite. What's an unreal number?
Something that's expressed as a combination of a real and imaginary number.
Well, like between 1 and 2, which are real numbers, there's an infinite number of all sorts of ways to divide it all up, things which may or may not exist, unreal numbers. So if counting real numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is an infinite number, and between 1 and 2, there's an infinite number of unreal numbers. And if between 2 and 3, there's an infinite number of unreal numbers. The infinity of unreal numbers is bigger than the infinity of real numbers. I thought infinity meant there's no end. Yeah. But in mathematics, we have different sizes of infinity. So if you take infinity and you subtract infinity from it, do you get 0? What do you get? Yes. Infinity minus infinity equals infinity. Mind-boggling. So the Shanti mantra says, Purnamada, Purnamidan, Purnat, Purnam Udachyate. From the infinity of that, the infinity of all this has issued forth, proceeded forth. And that mystery of how consciousness, which is one without a second, we've got this wonderful term in our study of Panchadashi, Kutastha. It's absolute, still, like a mountain. Yet within it, this entire world of name and form, which is also full, has proceeded or issued forth. And it says, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. When from the fullness of that infinity, the fullness of this is taken away, will there be a big crunch after the Big Bang? What remains? Infinity minus infinity is not zero. Infinity minus infinity is infinity. Purnam eva avashishyate. So let's take it down to the microcosm. Your mind, my mind, the self in you is infinite and full. From that infinite and full being, my mind comes into existence and then projects my world of name and form, of likes and dislikes, of successes and failures. From the fullness of that, the fullness of this issues forth. And in the deepest meditation, when the mind stops, yoga says, stop the mind and you will stop the world. When from the fullness of that, the fullness of this, Purnam eva avashishyate, fullness of me, all of that is in that Shanti. At the end, we chant Om again. And we chant Shanti 3 times. What does Shanti mean? Peace. So why do we do it 3 times? Because in order for our study to be fruitful, not bothered or distracted, we need to be relatively free from disturbances on the outside. We're in the middle of class and all of a sudden there's a fire alarm and the trucks are going by or people screaming outside on the street. It disturbs us. It's the first Shanti. The second one is we need to have relative peace in our physical body. If you have an ache or a pain or you're sick, it's a lot harder to focus, meditate, listen attentively. And the third one, the craziness of my mind. What am I going to do about that issue with it? What am I going to do about my daughter? What am I going to do about my husband? What am I going to do about my parents? What am I going to do about job? How could he have said that to me? Oh, I was so mean to so and so. What am I going to do? Sure, none of you have thoughts like that? No? So we want to be free from all of that. Put them on the shelf. We can deal with that craziness. So we chant Shanti 3 times to be free from the agitation of the world, free from agitations of the body, and free from agitations of my mind, so that my study is fruitful. All right, that's the meaning of Purnamada. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Any thoughts or questions about that? One of the most beautiful. With that in mind, let's start. Who's going to chant this morning?
I can chant.
Would you chant our first Ishavasya? There are actually swaras to this. This actually has tones. If we had a copy of, I've lost my mantra pushpam, but I don't think it matters. There's a very, very long introductory section in this book, which I recommend that you read, Swamiji's commentary.
Page 75.
Om Isha Vasyam Ida Sarvam Yatkischa Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Puchitha Magridha Kasya Svidhaman. All this, whatever moves in this universe, including those that move not, is indwelt or pervaded or enveloped or clothed by the Lord. That renounced thou shouldest enjoy. Covet not anybody's wealth.
So the first word, Isha, comes from the root ichati, which means to wish or to will. It's where we get the name of the Lord, Ishwara. So Isha and Ishwara mean the same thing. So it means there's so much that's implied here. In consciousness itself is the potentiality for all manifestation. And the infinite unfolds the phenomenal world in time and space. Any of you watch Neil deGrasse Tyson on YouTube or TikToky things? And he gets so excited about astrophysics. He was talking about when I was looking at this past week. Everything that our bodies are made of are actually what we call the heavier elements. And at the Big Bang, essentially, all that happened at the first clumping was hydrogen and a little helium. So where did all of these other elements come from that make up your body and mind? In time. Stars formed, galaxies formed, and in time these stars would supernova. And in those cataclysmic explosions of a supernova, all of the heavier elements have been created. So those of us who remember Hair, the musical back in the 60s, one of the lines is, "You are stardust." It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So Ishvara, in the vast potentiality of everything, has will, has intended 13.8 billion years later. You would be formed sitting here in the living room. Swamiji used to say it's a cosmos, not a chaos. It's beautiful, and there are laws of nature. It's organized. And humanity is just beginning to explore and understand the order of the universe, the mathematics behind it all. Stuff like that. There's so much we still don't know. But the Lord, Isha or Ishvara, is that principle, that Maya Shakti, from which all of this comes into being. So here the Upanishad says the entire phenomenal universe is not only manifested by the infinite, but governed, controlled, ordered by. And that's why we have so many teachings in all traditions that in some form or another teach let go and let God. A couple weeks ago, I was going to dinner with my friend Ron. And we left here and we were headed up Harrison Street, right around the corner. And there's a stoplight right there, just a few yards up where the big trucks go into Whole Foods. And I was just funning around the red light. I would change, nothing happened. Change, nothing happened. So Ron was looking at the light over to the left. And when it finally turned yellow, he goes, change. Light turned green. And I just laughed and laughed. And I said, that's like my ego and the Lord. The Lord is in charge of the stoplight. It will change in its time, like the seasons, like the spinning of the earth, like the supernovas, like galaxies colliding. But what does my ego do? I want it this way, change. I want it that way, change. how does the universe respond? Just keeps doing its thing. So in the Raja Yoga tradition, we have Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. The practice that's implied in this brings such great peace to turn our will and our lives to God's care. God's in charge anyway. Isha, the Lord, the controller. The same intelligence that plopped you here in my living room, moving traffic up and down Grand Avenue. It's changing the seasons. It's causing galaxies to spin. The intelligent thing for the mind to do is to surrender to that. That's like going out to the shore with your sword, thinking, I'm going to do battle with the waves to get them to stop coming in. It's an absurdity. But that's what we do. So it goes on and says, all this should be or is literally covered. But what we want to do is see that this governing principle, this Isha, is in charge of everything. Now we have to understand that God's perfection is different than human ideas of good and evil, right and wrong. Understand, destruction is part of God's plan. Everybody, everything dies, is destroyed. No form is permanent. All right. Read the second part again.
All this, whatever moves in this universe, including those that move not, is indwelt or pervaded or enveloped or clothed by the Lord. That renounced, thou shouldn't enjoy. Covet not anybody's work.
So tyaktena, I think, was the term he used, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It means to renounce, to abandon. So if we are yogis and we want peace of mind, let go of my attachment to the phenomenal world. Let it be, as the Beatles song says. Let it be. By means of renunciation, tyaktena. Let it go.
Well, we still have to take action.
Try stopping to take action. Very good point, Santosh, because your body, mind, intellect is not outside Ishvara. My desire to do this, my action to do that, is still governed by the same intelligence that's moving galaxies. You also, at the individual level, are God's plan. You're going to do what you're going to do. But if you want peace of mind, doesn't mean not to act, doesn't mean not to even enjoy. It means give up attachment. That's what Tyaktena means. Let me see if I can give you an example. When you see a beautiful sunset, do you grieve the loss of the sun? Can you do anything to prolong the sunset? Can you? Does it mean you shouldn't enjoy it? Have you ever gone up to Mount Tam or top of your building or maybe out to Ocean Beach to watch the sunset? It's beautiful here in the Bay Area. Haven't you done that? I'm not saying not to enjoy. I'm not saying not to act. But in my egoism, I don't want the sun to go down today. I have more things to do. Oh, it's so beautiful. I want it to stay an hour longer. Knock yourself out. Don't make yourself unhappy. Does that make it a little clearer?
Is that what coveting anybody's wealth means then?
We'll get to that. We'll get there. So yes, the idea here is we want to smash the belief that my happiness is a function of getting stuff. It's already noon, so we'll take up that last piece of this first mantra next week. So these are very dense. The style of an Upanishad is maximum meaning with minimum words, and they are deliberately obscure. If you try to study an Upanishad without a guru, or at least a really good commentary, it will only confuse you. So we got through the Shanti mantra and we're through the first mantra, except for that last little piece, which we will go into next week. Any thoughts or questions about what we covered today? I know we reviewed a lot of very basic material, but it's always good to get some of the foundational stuff. Let's chant our Shanti mantra. One more time and we'll end here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. And that very last tag, Hari Om, reverence to Om, and my salutations to all of the Gurus. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. And we end with Om Tat Sat, which means, and so it is. All right, thank you all.